Good morning, everyone. I'm Thad Swidzinski, and I'm a program facilitator working with the Regina District Industry Education Council and SunWest School, or with Good Spirit School Division. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce Matthew Malayney, who's a professional engineer, and he works as an electrical engineer manager at Precision Drilling in Edmonton. He leads a team of engineers that develop state-of-the-art software and technologies in the oil and gas industry. Just a reminder before we begin, this session is being recorded and will appear on the RDIEC YouTube channel for you or others to view in the future. We'd also like to request that any students who watch this session go to our website, which is www.rdiec.ca, and complete the student survey that can be found near the top of the website's homepage. Completion of this survey gets your name in a monthly draw for a $50 gift card. Again, the website, www.rdiec.ca. Once again, thanks, Matthew, for doing the session today, and welcome, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Thad. As mentioned, my name is Matthew Malayney. I'm a professional engineer, and I'm currently employed as the electrical engineering manager for Precision Drilling. I work out of Nisku, Alberta, which is a small industrial park outside of Edmonton. So my job involves managing a team of electrical engineers, computer engineers, and engineering technicians. We manage multiple projects ranging from heavy industrial equipment, working with control systems, power systems, and data acquisition. We focus primarily on drilling rigs and related equipment. In addition to this, I'm the responsible member for Precision Drilling, meaning that my role involves me confirming that we conform to engineering standards as a condition for our permit. We do electrical design work, we do control system design work, we work with equipment integration. I do a lot of logistics-based work. And my job does involve a lot of interdisciplinary coordination. I work with a lot of different groups and teams within our group and company to make systems work. We provide field support for our drilling rigs, and the job scope is across the board, everything electrical. We work with power generation, power distribution, heavy industrial equipment, and electrical motors. As well as the finer things such as the control equipment, the systems that make the equipment move. Everything from joysticks to computers to 600 horsepower motors and much higher. Large scale pumps, large scale equipment for use in oil and gas. My responsibility also involves reviewing work for junior engineers, and ultimately what we do as a team is generate value for our company utilizing new technologies. So engineering management requires a very broad scope of skills and a lot of specialized ones. Same time, first and foremost with any management position is very strong communication skills across very different communication styles. As an engineering manager, I'm forced to communicate primarily with engineers who sometimes may not be very well at communicating. So sometimes engineers tend to really like working with things rather than people. And that attracts a lot of people that don't necessarily communicate well with others. So part of being an engineering manager is having the ability to take technical resources, talk to technical people, and translate that to people that may not have the same skill set technologically, but are communicate in different styles. So as an engineering manager, I have to transition quite often between different types of communication and bridge gaps between different types of people. I'm also an engineer, and that means that I do have and need a high drive and ability to learn. To succeed as an engineering manager, you need strong math and analytic skills. You need to be able to excel using the scientific methods for problem solving. You have to have a high level of operational discipline, which means that you have to be able to set standards and stick to them. in basically everything you do. As a manager, I need to be emotionally mature and have an understanding of, things that my team members might be going through, and have an awareness of, how other people are operating, how they're behaving, in order to ensure that they can succeed in their roles. This leads into also requiring a strong situational awareness. In addition, managers and engineering managers typically need a high level of attention to detail. I do a lot of review work for work product that my engineers create and put out. And part of our standard operating procedure is to do peer review on all work that is performed. I also require the ability to motivate and inspire others. I do lead a team, and my team's success are my success. So if I can keep them happy and engaged in their work, they are very successful. People that are results driven tend to gravitate towards management. You also need the ability to prioritize and delegate work items. I have a large stack of things that need to be done at any point in time on my desk, and sorting through that, deciding which is important, which needs to be handled right now, and who can do this work is an important trait to have. I have the ability to manage multiple projects and people across a wide variety of disciplines. There are very different projects that we work on. I've got an electrical engineer right now working through a power distribution system, and a computer engineer working on a Microsoft IoT Edge data distribution system. They are completely unrelated disciplines, but I do transition very quickly between the two. I also need the ability to understand the impact of my decisions. As an engineer and an engineering manager, I make decisions daily that will impact the economic outlook of our product, as well as the safety and operations of our equipment. And as mentioned, I also need the ability to quickly change between work styles. So typically a good engineer will get promoted into management sooner or later, and transitioning into that requires somebody that can not just be a good engineer, but also, learn to become a people person. In terms of my job, I work out of multiple locations. My home office is in our drilling support center in Nisku, Alberta, which is, as mentioned, outside of Edmonton. I also work out of our corporate offices in Calgary, which are the two towers there are pictured in the middle center. Corporate offices in Houston as well. We operate drilling rigs all over North America. So there's a portion of field and remote work. So every month or so, I'm on the road in the field on drilling equipment. Requires remote work and weird hours to go with it. Primarily, I work behind a computer. We use a bunch of different design-based software, specifically AutoCAD for electrical schematics. I use a piece of software called MATLAB, which is a numerical analysis tool for performing all kinds of math, as well as virtual machines, creating virtual rigs on my computer to test software on. As a manager, I rely heavily on a product called Microsoft Teams, which is just a communication system. I'm constantly in meetings with people and talking to people virtually. We also use a product called Azure, which is for our software management system. In addition to the software side of things, I get to play with a lot of different electrical equipment. The first one you may not have heard of is called a programmable logic controller, or PLC. It's basically the electronics that dictate how equipment runs in the field. We also work heavily with IIoT equipment, which stands for the Industrial Internet of Things. So think anything that is connected to the internet and does anything. This is cutting edge technology. If you want a good example of an IoT device, you can think of like a Nest thermostat or something like that. It leverages the internet to expand on the functions of traditional equipment. In addition to the more complex computer-based stuff, I work in power electronics, which are basically electronics designed to move big motors. Typical drilling rig has about 3,000 horsepower of power available to it, and each of its motors can put out up to 1,600 horsepower. We control equipment that moves a lot of metal and a lot of fluid, and the power electronics dictate how that works. And then drilling rigs are basically big giant robots that drill holes in the ground. Now, we don't really care what we're drilling for. Typically, it's oil and gas, but our role is as more of a heavy equipment operator than anything. And from a strictly mechanical standpoint, they are very interesting to play with. So my job is very rewarding. I have a very high variability of work, as I've already discussed about. I do have the opportunity to work with and build cutting edge technology. If oil and gas were to go away right away, I would easily transition into almost any type of high-end work that requires industrial automation. So there is a lot of opportunity there. We're working with just stuff that is, well, it's hard to say, but it is very, very cutting edge. The job itself is financially rewarding. An engineering manager at an oil and gas firm does get compensated very well. I do have the opportunity to fully realize projects, and this is one of the best parts of my job. I can come into a concept on just paper that somebody's dreamed up and go through every step of that process to the point where it is a tangible value-add product. Now, typical project might start on a napkin as an idea in a break room, turn into a couple of design scoping meetings. We'll do budgetary analysis. Is it worth our time to build this product? Do we get to, then we design it, procure parts, build prototypes, test prototypes, release the product for production, create the production, deploy them in the field, commission the products, and finally see them delivering value for our project. My job offers me the ability to be in every step of that process. And it is incredibly rewarding, if you like building things, to take something from just your imagination and turn it into something that is generating profit. So the work is tangible and rewarding. Another benefit to my job is that I get to work with and develop future engineers, which can be just as rewarding. Seeing guys go through that process that I just mentioned on their own and guiding them as they go through that process is very, very fulfilling. Onto the downsides, though. This is an incredibly fast-paced job. So as I mentioned earlier, it is very difficult to transition when you're trying to focus very hard on something, but that is the demands of the job. As I mentioned earlier, you do need to be able to learn very quickly. And this is something that comes with experience, comes with further education, and taking your education seriously. So I may not know what I'm working on tomorrow, but I do know that I will be able to learn about it and figure it out. Our field equipment operates 24/7, and that demands 24/7 attention. I have no such thing as off days. I do work a traditional, work week, but I'm always on call because my position demands that level of responsibility. Now, that doesn't mean I'm formally on call, but I do have to be able to answer a phone most times. I am forced to operate outside of my comfort zone quite a bit. I am very much a traditional engineer. I would much rather sit in the dark in my office and not talk to anybody and work on things. But that is not how one can be successful in a management role. So I do have to transition to different types of working environments quite often. And sometimes that does put me outside of what I'm regularly comfortable doing. A management role itself can be very mentally draining as well as emotionally difficult. I do have work weeks where I sit at my desk all week and have absolutely no energy after. This is very weird from a standard type job in that, it does lend itself to be very sedentary. I have to prioritize in my off hours my own fitness and my own health because my job does not allow me to do that while I'm working. As for salary and benefits, that makes up for a lot of the downside. My compensation range is in line with an engineering manager. It is comprised of a base salary, an annual corporate performance bonus, which is based on a percentage of my salary. I have long-term incentive retention grants, which are on a 3-year cycle. I'm issued stock options essentially. And I participate in a stock purchase plan, which allows me to purchase shares in my company and there is a corporate match to go along with any shares I do purchase. After all is said and done, year to year, that puts me in the $150,000 to $200,000 annually area. It does fluctuate year to year. The price of oil and gas, the industry itself fluctuates quite a bit, and our bonuses represent how well we're doing as a company. Other benefits, in addition to the compensation, I have a personal use company vehicle. I have a corporate iPhone. We get extended health and dental. We do have additional health and paramedical spending available to us. We do have a flexible work arrangement, and this is pretty standard in high-end professions nowadays, which means that I have the ability to work from home as my job allows. In addition to that, I have 10 annual PTO days, which is paid time off, which is can be considered mental health days. But there are no questions asked days off to just go do whatever you want with pay. One of the other downsides to our more corporate style work is that I do not have a traditional pension plan. I have what's called a defined contribution pension plan. It means that I put money into a savings account and the company kicks me some money to match up to a certain amount. It does require that I have to be more fiscally responsible with my money than say others with a defined pension, and this means that I am solely responsible for my own retirement. Holidays for my role range between 3 to 6 weeks based on experience, and my typical work week is 37.5 hours. I typically work 8 o'clock to 4:30 Monday to Friday. I am a manager, and that means I'm non-overtime eligible in the province of Alberta. So, like I mentioned earlier, I am on call quite a bit. If I do end up working outside of these core hours, I do not get compensated for that outside of my standard compensation. Having said that, I am in a management position where I can kind of dictate the hours that I do work. My expectations from my company is that I'm available 37.5 hours per week, and where those hours lie is, up to debate. Engineering salaries are widely available, and if you guys are interested in learning more about them, the PEGS website is a very good resource as they publish an annual salary survey. PEGS is the governing body for engineers in Saskatchewan. So, in order to get to this role, I required 10 years of engineering experience in an applicable field. In this case, I'm an electrical engineer. I required an engineering degree in the applicable field, and I needed an engineering license. In order to obtain an engineering license, I needed an engineering degree. I needed to be in good public standing, which means I cannot commit crimes. And I needed 4 years of relevant experience as an engineer in training. Typically, prerequisites for an engineering management job is also people skills and the ability to, succeed as an engineer. So, how did I get here? I guess would be the next question. I started off graduating high school with not really much idea of what I wanted to do. I had about a 90% grade point average, which really allowed me to do whatever I wanted. And, I didn't really have a lot of direction. I didn't do a lot of career prep in high school. But at the time of graduation, I was considering going into education. I was considering pursuing a career in architecture, computer science. Engineering was on the list. I was also looking at biology, getting into some kind of business degree of some sort with really no idea where to go from there. I was interested in forensics, and chemistry seemed like a good idea to get into that. I was also looking into going into like adventure sports. I had a career idea in mind where I would live in the mountains and teach snowboarding. And agriculture as a all-purpose backup plan. It seemed farming was always available and always looking for workers. Ultimately, I decided to apply to the University of Alberta's engineering program. Basically, the idea there was that it would give me another year to decide kind of where I wanted to take my career. and I could always transition into sciences if needed if I decided engineering wasn't for me. So after my first year of engineering school, I applied to the engineering physics program at the University of Alberta. For those of you not familiar with engineering physics, it is a subsect of electrical engineering focused primarily on microelectronics. And because I am very stupid, I decided to take a full flight of high-level physics courses as well. At the time, I was very interested in analog electronics, wave physics, and material science, and that program fit very well with that. Then I convocated in 2008 with no particular career path in mind. And that led me to looking for professional work. So I started my career as a professional working as a wireline field engineer for Schlumberger. Now, wireline field engineer runs a group of operators, and you are responsible for using electromechanical tools to survey wells. I had no intention of ever going into oil and gas when I started. And it ended up being a job that was hiring at the time. So it's very weird when you get out of school with a degree that not a lot of people know about and trying to find work. So I ended up just going to Schlumberger because they were hiring and paid relatively well. It served as a very good introduction to the oil field and some of the more technical work that is available to people in that area. Only lasted a year there. This was the 2008-2009 downturn, and I was promptly laid off from the wireline field engineer position, which wasn't the worst. I was able to take the skills I learned at that position and go to Schlumberger's direct competitor at Halliburton and work as a wireline field professional, which is a very similar similar role. And I spent 2 years there doing completion work. Without getting into too much detail, it meant I was playing with explosives to open up wells that were already drilled and ready for production. Ultimately, the wireline roles, they were fun, they paid well, but they weren't for me. They weren't a traditional engineering role, which is what I was more after. And the career progression path just didn't seem to be in line with what I wanted out of a life. So in 2011, an opportunity came up with Precision Drilling to apply to their control systems team as an electrical engineer in training. And that's where I started my real professional career here. So I started on as an electrical engineer in training. And like I said, most of the work I did was very much similar to the work I do now, but focused on building control systems. We had a couple of products available that needed user interfaces designed, control schemes designed, as well as behavior schemes designed. So I was able to leverage the education I got from Schlumberger and Halliburton working with drilling equipment to a role at Precision Drilling, which is more in line with what I actually wanted. Now, I wouldn't have known to apply to Precision Drilling or even consider it as a career had I not jumped into the other roles prior. So that is probably the best part of the two previous roles. In 2015, I met the qualifications to get my professional license and was promoted to an electrical engineer at Precision Drilling. For those of you not familiar with the engineering profession, is that once you have a license, you are legally and ethically bound to your work. So if I were to design something and sign off on it, and an electrician were to go build it, and it were to cause all kinds of problems, I could be held legally liable for my work product. At this point in time, I also began overseeing the work of junior engineers and guys that hadn't got their license yet. And eventually was in 2019 promoted into my current role as an engineering manager. So engineering managers are always in high demand. To excel in this role, one must be a good engineer as well as both a good manager. It leads to all kinds of different opportunities in business management as well as engineering and technical management. This is the type of role that can lead to upper management and executive positions. And in many instances, this is a kind of final stop on an engineering career ladder. But the opportunities that come with it are kind of limitless. It's also a good prerequisite role before starting an independent engineering firm. Related occupations to this would be, general management, software development in my current role, electrical systems management, electrical engineering, consulting engineering, business management. Really, the sky's the limit. And engineering was a good fundamental start. And if you do want to get into management and you are technically inclined, engineering is a very, very good career path and choice. As far as work-life balance, the initial grind in my original roles was quite difficult. This is oil field, and there is a lot of long hour in demand. In my current role, it's actually pretty easy and relatively good. The responsibility level at this type of job does make it difficult to disconnect, though. On weekends, it's hard not to think about your project work. When you're on vacation, you're always trying to keep track of your emails because the work is not going away. If I disconnect from my work and ignore my phone for a long period of time, that's fine, but I'm just going to have a worse time in the future. You do need to make sure to allocate time to your own health and fitness, as I mentioned earlier. And an engineering position does demand continuous professional development. So outside of my working hours, I do continuous learning. I do have to make contributions to the profession, contributions to society, as well as promoting the engineering position, which is what I'm doing right now. Overall, it's very good, but as a working professional, you do need to make some personal sacrifices to go with that. With that, that's kind of the end of my presentation. I'll leave things open to questions.
Okay, Matthew, thank you. Thank you very much for this. And I know one of the comments you had made during your presentation was with your position, you need to pay attention to detail. And I was very impressed with the level of detail that you've provided to us in this presentation. And we really got a good sense of what your job involves. Renette, would you have any questions for Matthew?
Yes, I agree that very well laid out your PowerPoint. I think it explains a lot of detail to students what's needed. One of the questions that I have for you is, what's the demand of this particular type of job for students that are interested in going into engineering, maybe just engineering as a whole sector? Are there engineering jobs out there? What are you finding in the last few years, and maybe for students moving forward, choosing this career path?
So engineering tends to go in waves, and it really depends on how the economy is doing. Right now, it is very difficult to hire an engineer, and they are in high demand. When I started my career, it was 2004, and the economy was booming. And engineering was basically considered a golden ticket for, a job and a career. Now, when I graduated, 2008 was a historic, terrible time for the economy. And the engineering profession was just, there was no demand. Typically, the schools will fill their classes based on how well the industry is doing. So if the industry demands a lot of engineers in very certain fields, they will expand their class sizes. If the demand shrinks, they will reduce their class size. It's hard to say because engineers in general is such a wide term. When you take engineering classes, you start off kind of in a general engineering role, but you're asked very quickly to specialize in a different field. Right now, it's very, very difficult to hire mechanical and electrical engineers. Mining engineers are always in demand. Environmental engineers are probably one of the biggest in demand jobs right now. And, it comes and goes in waves. So we're having a very difficult time right now finding personnel that is qualified and wants to work in this field. It is, I'd say, if you any of this sounds right, you'd probably have a very good time finding work in these areas.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate the types of engineers that you actually, specifically talked about, like the mechanical, the engineer, or the electrical. I think students kind of need to know that because it is overwhelming in your first year to pick that specialty, and I guess you base it on what you know and what you what's your interest. But I think even for them to know that there are certain ones that are maybe more in high demand right now, that's awesome. I think besides that, like I said, you've answered all those questions very nicely that I think students will want to know. I'll give it back to Thad.
Okay, thanks, Renette. Yes, as to repeat, Matthew, this was very informative. And I know that students, when they're watching this, are really going to get a good sense of what's involved with engineering and the management piece. So I think I think we can end this. And again, once again, thanks so much.